I spoke on the Electoral College. I was an Electoral College delegate that time, and that's another interesting experience. If you've never served in Electoral College, you need to. And I had the privilege of serving for President Bush in 2000, when the campaign was being challenged by the Gore campaign. And Louisiana delegates were not, we were not pledged to any candidate. So in 1 week's time, I got over 11,000 emails asking me to support Vice President Gore instead of President Bush, but I didn't. Today, I'm supposed to start with a lawyer joke. The two most dangerous things in the world, a doctor with a private plane and a lawyer with a microphone. So here we go. Takings issue. You know, it's important, and I appreciate Mike talking about the founding fathers. When you forget why people came to America, I mean, look what they were dealing with over in England. They had a king who was ultimate authority. He could take their property. He could take their possessions. He was head of the church. He told them what religion to follow. I mean, the king had the absolute authority. And imagine back in the 1600s, getting in a ship, sailing to a foreign place, completely unknown, and coming over here and thinking enough about your own personal freedoms to want to fight the monarchy in England. I have a personal story because I have a child who's Vietnamese. She came to live with us when she was about 12. Her father was a political prisoner in South Vietnam. Well, actually, it was Vietnam then. He was a South Vietnamese soldier, and when Saigon fell, he was sent to Hanoi to be re-educated. Her family was fortunate enough to get her out, and she came to live with us and ultimately became a U.S. citizen. But I'll never forget, she was a senior at Magnet High School during the first Gulf War, and she came home from school one day, and she was mad as the devil. And I said, Mikan, what are you so mad about? She said, people are upset because our country is over there fighting to free people like me. She said, had the U.S. not come to Vietnam, I would have never been here. We ultimately got her family out, and you talk about some strong U.S. citizens having not had the freedom that we all grew up with. They are the ultimates and believers in the U.S. Constitution. When I went back a few years ago and decided to get a master's degree in environmental science, it was basically self-preservation. I'm in the oil and gas business. A lot of what we do is under constant legal threat. But there were environmental regulations that were beginning to impact our industry, and I'm going to go through a few cases here, and I'll be the first to admit it's boring to listen to case law, but you have to see how the Constitution is constantly being eroded as you go through these various cases. Early on, the founders of the Constitution agreed that the ownership of private property is an important part of economic and social fabric. But they also recognized that certain laws, such as zoning and other limitations to protect public welfare, were part of our legal system. But the takings question has gone beyond zoning issues as we have gotten into environmental issues, and I'm going to go through how the changes have come about. Mike talked about the Constitution being ratified in 1787. The first 10 amendments were ratified in 1791. And for about 100 years there were no cases dealing with the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. And I hate following somebody who's younger than me because I don't know how to do PowerPoint. I could have done a poster board, but my wife won't let me use permanent markers, so I'm just going to have to. Do we have the Fifth Amendment? All right, thank you. Thank you, Mike. The Fifth Amendment, and understand the framers of the Constitution, every word that they use has a meaning. There's not an either or, there's not an ampersand. Every word has a specific meaning. But what I want you to look at as we deal with the Fifth Amendment that pertains to taking is the part that says, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Understand the Constitution does not prohibit legislation that can take your property. We take property to build public roads, to build sewer systems, to create lakes sometimes. So there are some valid takings, but what does the Fifth Amendment say? You should not be deprived of your property unless the property is taken for public use and with just compensation. Okay, what were the framers thinking when they came up with this? Again, think back to 17th and 18th century where the king, if he wanted your house, he took it. If he wanted your property, he took it. You didn't have to go through any legal proceedings. The king was the ultimate authority. If he didn't like your hair color, he could have you killed. He could do whatever he wanted to. He was the ultimate ruler. So early on, the framers, out of this respect of property, wanted to make certain that we had something that would protect our property rights. In 1871, the case of Pumley versus Green Bay, the state of Wisconsin built a dam which was not on the plaintiff's property, but as a result of building the dam, it flooded the plaintiff's property. The Wisconsin state constitution had a takings clause, which was almost identical to the U.S. Constitution, and the court ruled that the plaintiff was entitled to just compensation because of the fact that his land had been flooded, even though there was not an actual proceeding against the land. The dam flooded the landowner's property. He was entitled to just compensation under the Fifth Amendment. Later on, in Loretto, which was a lawsuit in New York, the city of New York passed an ordinance requiring installation of cable equipment in everybody's apartment, a little tiny wire running through everybody's property. Loretto sued, claiming that this was a taking under the Fifth Amendment, and even though it was less than 1.5 cubic feet, and the fact that there was no showing of economic harm, Loretto won and got, I think he won $1, but it was just the idea that he was having to do something on his property that he didn't want to do, and it was the government doing it. In 1833, Barron versus Mayor of the City Council of Baltimore, the facts were the city of Baltimore diverted the flow of water into the Baltimore Harbor doing street construction, and as a result, dumped mud and silt in front of the plaintiff's wharf. With the wharf silted in, boats were not able to come in anymore, and so Mr. Barron decides he's going to sue the city. Unfortunately, at this time, we had not come up with a 14th Amendment yet, and so the courts held, although there was, in fact, an issue, the Fifth Amendment only applied to the federal government, not to the states, and so the plaintiff lost the case. Thus came about, let's go to the 14th Amendment. 14th post-Civil War Amendment spawned national protection of a wide range of rights, and the 14th Amendment addressed this specific issue in Barron that he lost under. And the particular language that's important in the 14th Amendment is, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges of immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, there's that due process language again, of law, nor to deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of law. So as a result of the 14th Amendment coming about, now all of a sudden the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, now are applicable to the states thanks to the 14th. So now we continue to go on with takings issues, and although initially the takings issues were federal in nature, now we're moving into state and city issues. And a lot of them are pertaining to zoning. Early zoning cases, there was no question that cities and municipalities had the right to legislate pollution, legislate sale of alcoholic beverages, and it was basically a public harm type designation. A zoning law was permissible as long as the governmental entity was protecting some sort of public harm.